Okay, hello and welcome school leaders to our monthly Zoom call. Today we have the great pleasure of talking with Pastor Sally Curtis. She is a pastor director. She's everything at Victory School of Supernatural Ministry in Houston, Texas. I'll be hosting the call. My name's Cassie and I'm the project manager here at the BSSM School Planting Department. Super excited to host you guys, to talk more and hear from Pastor Sally and the years of experience that she brings to the school planting world. There are many of you who will join us live today, and then many who will watch this later with your teams. And we just pray that this would bless you, that it would give you insight and wisdom and just clues into what God's doing in your city and in your community, to really train up people to know who they are, to know who God is, and to continue to bring heaven to earth. So if you guys don't know, Pastor Sally started her school, Victory SSM or VSSM, in 2011 in Houston, Texas, after having a vision in 2009. She pursued what she felt God was leading her towards, and now they're finishing up. I don't think you finished yet, right? You're finishing up your 8th year,
Right.
where they have 180 students with roughly 24 churches represented. They do a part-time school that meets one night a week, I think on Tuesdays.
Yes.
Right? Tuesdays, from September to May. So they're doing what we see a lot of schools do. They do part-time, they fit it with what works within their community, and they allow people to do intercession, worship, activations, watching course content from our online platform called BSSM Equip, where we have videos that schools can stream and have access to teachings from Pastor Bill, from Pastor Chris, from Danny Silk, from anyone from our environment over the years, just to get some of those foundational teachings. And then they do more activations, revival group, and whatever they feel the Lord on. So what we love about Pastor Sally is that she had a vision from the Lord, and she allowed God to really paint the vision for her and her community. And her school has such a unique, distinct flavor that is so who she is and who her leadership team is. And we just strongly encourage you guys, as you're starting to dream about what's coming for you in your school, or whatever it looks like, right? That it would have your unique flavor, your unique taste. We're offering wisdom from years of her experience, but this isn't necessarily how you have to do it. This is just the advice and what she's learned. So, yeah, Pastor Sally, we're thrilled to have you. We're so
Thank
thrilled.
you. I'm so honored to be here.
Oh.
So excited to be here with you all.
It's beautiful. When she was here a few months ago, and we were talking, and even prophetically, God showed us how she would be training up people to start their own schools. And she's like, that's what I'm doing. And even today, hearing from Randy saying, teach me, show me. And then the fact that this Zoom call is happening today, it's even God showing the acceleration on that word and saying it's happening, it's here. People are hungry and they're ready to get started. So let's kick it off. We're going to do some Q&A at the end of this. But to get started, Pastor Sally, is this how I'm going to start? Yeah, what advice would you give a brand new school leader or planter?
I would say, first of all, that you are going to reproduce who you are. So if you're starting a school, I feel like it's key that you get immersed in the culture yourself first. If you're just starting from scratch and you've never been to BSSM, for example, and you don't know anything, what I did is I took a year before I started the school and just immersed myself in the curriculum and the culture and the core values so I could reproduce it well. It may not take you a year to do it, but I would really recommend that, before you start, you become very familiar with the culture and let it become a part of your own.
Come on. Can you share a little bit more? We often tell people to go slow. Sometimes God's on something and it happens very quickly. Can you share some of the benefits of that first year that you took, where you just allowed this to become who you were, where you allowed it to really be what you believed in action, not only in belief?
Absolutely. I have the privilege of being in a revival church. So since 1994, I have been immersed in the presence of God and in this culture. But as I began to listen to the teaching, and it was 2010 when we actually purchased the curriculum, and I began to watch the videos, because back then it was all video curriculum, and it was language to my experience. And so it was, for me, it was like, oh, finally, there's language for this. We can reproduce this. And so I just became more and more immersed in it. The Lord just began to give me downloads. And the more I received, it was almost like it was an unfair advantage for me to have this material and not share it with others. I was like, everybody has to have this because it's changing my life. And I knew it was taking me to another level. And I was like, everybody has to go to this level too, you know? So
Yeah, totally. Totally. Pastor Sally, who did you dream with back then as you started to get immersed and you're like, I have to share this? Who and how did you let people into that process?
well, I was actually transitioning. I'd been a youth pastor for years, and I was transitioning to be an associate pastor here at Victory Christian Center. And I was in a season where I was like, God, what is next? And so I had been really seeking him for vision for what he wanted me to put my hands to next. And I was spending a lot of time with the young leaders and the young adults who had moved out of my youth ministry and were now, you know, in their 20s. And I remember the first time I shared it, I was sitting at lunch with a group of 20-year-olds, and I looked at them and I said, I have a vision, you know, and I don't know how this is going to happen, but I found the curriculum to make it happen. And so I just began to dream with them, and they began to prophesy over me and prophesy into it, and how it was going to happen right away. And it did. Everything they said came to pass.
Wow, were those people that you shared that vision to that day, have any of them joined you in supporting the school or being a part of the school, maybe being students?
Quite a few of them. There was 3 of them that actually helped me start from the very beginning. And when I started, I did not have an administrative assistant. And administration is not my strength. I can do it, but I do not love to do it. And these people were all super strong in administration, and they came alongside me and began to help me put together spreadsheets, applications, everything we needed to do to make it work. And one of them actually was a leader in the school for years, and became my first intern when we haven't even had interns. So he served me for years, and he was amazing.
I love that. I think that's one of the questions we get most often from future leaders too. Of who do you need on your team? You know, what kind of people do you need on your team? If you're the one casting vision and you've got the word from the Lord, what kind of people do you need around you? And I think even hearing you say, like, you needed that administrative assistant, you need someone who can actually put the vision into action.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are there any other people, or maybe you could even expand on that person's role on what would be really or what was valuable and what would be valuable if you were to do it again?
Well, I actually have my administrative assistant here with me, and she's amazing. Her name's Diane, and she's the one who is making everything flow this year. She is just so powerful. So Diane, would you come in for just a minute?
Hello.
So Diane oversees everything administratively in the school. I mean, you said that I do it, but really Diane does it and makes me look good. So I mean, you need everything from somebody printing out the applications. We do them all online, but we like to have them all printed so we can go through them, file them, you know, and so there's a whole lot involved. Would you like to share, Diane?
Yes, I think part of the heart to this school is it's our home. We're inviting people into our home. So I think it's very important that you have the gift of hospitality and you're able to greet them, and it's not just a school, them paying tuition. It's about what they're walking through in their life. So that's the key. Is I love it. It fits me perfectly because I love admin and I love pretty things and making people feel warm and welcome. So that, I think that's the key.
So important.
She does an amazing job.
Definitely. Are there any other roles that you think, that would be super helpful, or this person has been super helpful, or this kind of person has been super helpful, even in team development or core team functions?
Well, when we first started, like I said, it started with a vision. I had no idea how many students we would have. We had 100 students the first year. So it was like, whoa, okay, we've got a lot of administrative duties to do. We have a lot of organization to do. And I immediately had to recruit leaders. And so one of the things we do is we do revival groups. In every single week, we try to meet in our revival groups, and we divide people into groups. And I have a group leader who is pretty much a pastor over those students and walks with them through the whole process of the 9 months. And so I have the first year, I had probably 8 to 10 students per group. This last year, because the school had grown so much, I had about 14 per group. And those are the very key leaders to make it happen, because they're the ones that when things begin to surface in the students, when they begin to have problems, when they begin to have struggles, they're the ones that come alongside them and help them walk through the things that come up.
Yeah. Is there any, I know even for our own school, our revival group pastors are vastly different. They carry so many different characteristics or gifts. And is there anything that you would, maybe advice that you would suggest on like core values that person would carry? It doesn't necessarily have to be like they're all gifted speakers or something, but is there anything that you've seen that's been more of a theme or a common core value in your group leaders?
Well, I believe the culture of honor is just key. I mean, they have to be able to honor people and value people and see the gold in people. And, when people know that you believe in them, then they're willing to let you help them with their issues. And if they don't feel like you believe in them and you don't see the gold in them, then they're not so willing. And so I believe that is a key value that they must have, is to be able to honor people and value people. And now with the curriculum that you guys have presented with the online, I would really recommend, if anybody puts together a team, that they have their leaders go through the curriculum ahead of time and adopt those core values as their own before they start actually leading a revival group.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Pastor Sally, I feel like we've defined some really good roles within your core team. Can you tell us a little bit about what your role was like when you first started the school? I think it can look different for the different kinds of directors, but most directors are highly visionary. They're the forefront person who's kind of paving the way. But there are certain schools where, depending on size or depending on skill set, that director may also be a pastor. That director might be the worship leader. That director, it depends on what hat they wear. But can you maybe just focus on like what your role was in the beginning and kind of what you do now?
Absolutely. I am passionate about empowering people, and I have been for years. I mean, before I was in the school, I was in children's ministry, training children how to hear the voice of God, how to prophesy, how to heal the sick. And then it began with youth and going out into the streets and doing evangelism with the youth. And so for me, that's who I am. And that's what I began with, is you're going to reproduce who you are. And I believe that it's not enough for us just to have this culture in the church. We have to take it out of the four walls of the church. And because I'm passionate about evangelism, I'm passionate about outreach, it is a core value of our school and is actually doing what we teach. And so every time we teach something, we ask them to then do it, because it's not enough for them just to learn.
Yeah, really good, really good. Is there anything that maybe you'd give advice for? I know I talk to a lot of leaders who part of their own development, but also their staff's development is thinking, okay, in the first year, I touched a lot of things. In the second year, I learned that I actually need to hand that over. The third year, I realized, yep, all of that's out of my hand because I need to focus on developing our leaders. Rather than doing X, Y, or Z, my focus is now here. Is there any advice that you'd give even on that forefront of like things that maybe you did the first like 1 to 3 years that you're not even touching anymore?
I'm trying to think, but I'm a team builder. So from the get-go, I had team leaders and they were doing the majority of the pastoring of the students. I was pretty much overseeing from the very beginning. I think the only thing that changed was when I was able to hire an administrative assistant, which was amazing. I took my hands off of administration completely, and that has been the biggest blessing to me.
That's great. I think that's one of the keys, right? With leadership, it's like, okay, I can pass this off and not really think about it. Give them the authority to make the decisions and to know that that was something that you held as a core value from the beginning and that the fruit from that has continued to grow. Like your leaders are producing fruit. The leaders of leaders of leaders are producing fruit. So I think that's great advice, even to share that of like from the beginning. Don't be afraid to let people lead. Don't be afraid to give it to them and fully trust them in that. And knowing that God's called that team to be around you. God's called that team to really rally around this vision and to bring it forward. So that's powerful. Something you talked about was your revival group leaders and how when things are happening with the students, they're the ones kind of helping to deal with and help and support and pray for and pastor them. Do you have any tools or anything that you do to pour into your pastors or to even just pour into them, serve them, sow into them, anything like that that you guys do on like a weekly or a monthly basis or even every year?
We have I think it's about every 2 to 3 months we have meetings, depending on the need for them. I think we have a few more at the beginning of the year than we do at the end of the year. And we get together, we brainstorm, we share ideas, we empower one another, encourage one another, share any problems that may be coming up with their group, and how we as pastors can help them with those situations that are coming up. We also have Sozo ministry here at VCC. And yes, and I found within the first 2 years of doing the school that the students that went through a Sozo grew faster than any of the other students. And so after year 2, I made it a requirement that everybody who goes through the school has a Sozo. So not only can they get some inner healing, but they can also learn these tools as they're out ministering to others. And that's been very helpful as well.
That's huge. Pastor Sally, is that something that because it's the requirement that it's provided through the school, or is that something that they pay for? Is that included in tuition?
No, it is. We do not charge them to go through the Sozo. So
that's awesome. It's such a tangible way to really sow into even that healing part of their life and even the activation of, okay, you walk through this. And it's going to give you the tools and the knowledge to do this yourself. Something that you mentioned earlier, and we'll do tons of Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions, maybe on like the team process, we can certainly get to those. You mentioned earlier about admissions. And I think a lot of people are kind of in that process of like, what kind of admissions process do you have? What did you have in the beginning? You know, what kind of students made up your first class or your first couple class? You know, like what are you guys looking for? Maybe you could share a little bit about that process for you guys.
Yes, when we first started, we had paper applications. And we had piles of paperwork. And since then, we've gone to the online applications, and it's so much easier. They apply online. We're not having to chase people down to get them an application and meet with them to get them an application. They're not having to come by the church to pick up an application. They can just go online, get those applications, fill them out online. We do require that they have a pastoral and a personal reference. We have had some issues with people over the years who do not have a pastor. They go from church to church, from revival meeting to revival meeting, and aren't submitted to any kind of authority figures. That usually changes once they, have an interview and we get to know them a little bit and explain to them the importance of, being connected somewhere.
Beautiful. Now you mentioned an online application. Is that something that you guys have built through a form, or is that something that like a website or an app tool has helped you develop?
It's on our website, and I am sure that Diane, do you know?
It's on
like I said, I don't do the administration, so here's Diane.
It's on BSSM website, and they just click on and fill it out, and then a personal and pastoral, they'll tell that person to get online and fill it out, and then it comes directly to us. We're in the process. We have a new system called Rock, and so that is something that we are excited about. In the next 30 days, when they submit their email, they'll automatically fill it in through Rock, and all the information will populate all the way down. So we're excited about that. So it's very easy for them. Second year is a different scenario. They just need a leadership, the revival group recommendation. And then after that, if they do retakes, we have quite a few that do retakes. And they just have to have a leader recommendation.
That sounds like a game changer.
Yes, it does.
It sounds like it's going to change the way that you guys do admissions.
It's going to make Diane's life a lot easier once we go to Rock.
Yes. So I feel like whenever people ask us, what kind of students you guys take, and I often hear, and I think this is your same response, what kind of student do you want to develop? What does it look like to know what kind of students you want to take in, like in determining that? It's like, what are we going to give them this year? Where do we want to see them grow to? What's the transformation? What could that look like for them? But are there any red flags that you guys look for but that you notice in admissions? Or was it maybe in the beginning, let's just take people and help them on their journey? Or could you maybe share a little bit about that process for you guys?
Yes. From the first year, we've had to turn people away, and we always look at whether this would be a benefit to them and whether it would be a benefit to the rest of the group, the whole. And if we have people who have a lot of emotional issues, deal with a lot of rejection, things like that, and they're not willing to go through some healing, they can actually, draw the life out of the group and draw the life out of the school, and cause a lot of problems in the school. So we usually recommend for them to take a year and spend some time getting some inner healing, getting some help, getting some counseling, and then reapply next year. And so that's usually a red flag for me. Anybody who's struggling with addictions, anybody who's having, serious marriage problems or problems at home, I usually recommend for them to work on those, and that we'll come alongside them and help them, and then reapply, once things are better.
Yeah. Have you guys had students who weren't accepted maybe the first year, but then reapplied and have had success coming through the school?
Yes, we've had quite a few that we've said no to, and we always tell them this isn't a permanent no. These are the things we'd like to see you, look into, and, look into a SOZO, look into, working on these things. And we tell them the reasons why, and that they were not accepted. And then we've had several go through, get some emotional healing, and then go through and be extremely successful in the school.
Powerful. I think it's good. Even BSSM, we have a discipleship school that some folks will go to before they come to school. But it's important for even the people to know, like, where you are in this, because we're looking at what's best for you, because we're looking at what's best. Like, this might not be what's best for right now, but that doesn't mean it's not what's best for you long term. But even to get that healing or to take the time to really go through that journey with the Lord is important. And so it doesn't mean it's a no forever. And the fact that you have so many testimonies already of that just says a lot that that really was the right choice for that person,
Right.
even if it didn't make sense at that time. So tell me this. We talk about people being admitted. We talk about your team. How do people even find out? How did you guys initially market the school? Where do people find out about it? What has worked? What hasn't worked in terms of marketing? I think that's something that people are even looking at now or soon if they're opening a school.
Well, when we first started, it was mostly word of mouth. And like I said, we have the advantage of being in a church that's in revival culture. So we have Friday night revival services every Friday night, and we have been since '94. So people from around the city come to get refreshed from all different churches, all different denominations. So we advertised in the church. We created videos. We put brochures together, and we would advertise in the church on Friday nights. And that's where a lot of our people came from. The first year, it was mostly people from our church. But we had some ladies that came all the way from Louisiana, which is 3-hour drive. They drove every Tuesday night here and back. And so they were passionate, and they heard from somebody who lived here. It was just word of mouth. Everybody was super excited. You're starting a school. Oh my gosh, I want to be a part. So we've had people say, I wanted to move to Reading and go to BSSM. But I would have had to leave my grandkids. I would have had to leave my family. And then we saw that you guys had a school. So some of them, it's been through the website they've seen as they've Googled us also.
Beautiful. I think that's the other huge advantage for most of the part-time schools out there is they get anybody, moms, business professionals. What is some of your demographic even look like? Even to show people, it's not just the 18 to 24-year-olds. You know what I mean? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's such a vast majority of people. Yeah, would love to hear that.
Well, this year we have our youngest student is 15, which I've never allowed a 15-year-old in before. But this year it was an exception to the rules because she was so passionate. She went and got a summer job so she could save up the money to pay the tuition. I mean, how do you say no to that? And so we made an exception, let her in. She's been super mature. She's grown tremendously. But we have students all the way to 80. We have a lot of, probably most of our students are between the ages of 30 and probably 55, 60. And they work full time. We have engineers, we have teachers, they're all professionals from all around the city. And so it's pretty exciting because they're spreading revival throughout the city and into their sphere of influence.
Oh, praise Jesus. This is what we love because it's like people are getting immersed in it and they get to go right into the marketplace, right to where they work, right to where they live. And it's just like, this is what I'm learning. This is who I am. And it's just radiating off of them. Right. And the fact that this is the majority of your demographic, that just feels like the Great Commission. That feels like, let's bring them home. Let's get it in here. Let's go. Let's do this. Oh, I'm really touched right now. I love that. I love that. I think this is the beauty of a school. And you've got learners 15 and 80. Pastor Bill was speaking this past week on the life of a disciple, and he said, being a disciple means you're always learning. The minute we stop learning, the minute we stop, following, in that sense of like, we have to follow the Lord. We have to keep learning from him. We can always become more and more like him. And the fact that you have 80-year-olds so hungry to be a part of this, to be part of what God's doing and learning and what they bring to the younger generation as they're mixing in with a revival group, as they're talking about life challenges like this. This is it. This is so it. So that's huge. Do you have a testimony? I don't know. I just feel like there's something. Do you have something?
I do. There's a college professor that's in our school this year, and she's absolutely amazing. And she's been getting words of knowledge in the classroom. And she'll share a word of knowledge, and somebody will get healed, and she'll lead the whole class to the Lord. And so she's been really influencing the college culture, and it's just beautiful to see. We had an engineer one year who he had an idea that he knew was an idea from God for his company, and it saved the company millions of dollars. And his boss was like, how did you know this? You know, this has been in front of us all the time. How did you see this? And he was able to tell him it was the Lord. So it's so exciting to me to see how people are influencing society.
I'm like emotional, and I can feel the power of the presence of God right now. Do you have any more testimonies? Anything else?
Oh, don't we just love the testimonies? Well, one of the things I like to do with the students is I do a surprise treasure hunt twice a year. I don't tell them we're doing it. And they come in, and I'm like, we're going out, guys, you know, write down clues. I tell them what to do. They write them down. We go out. There was a lady one year, she was going to quit the school because she was like, I don't hear God like these people do. I'm not doing well, you know, and she really felt like she wasn't ready for the school. And we went out that night on the treasure hunt, and they had a word to go to Chick-fil-A, and that there was going to be a man in a red shirt. They went into Chick-fil-A, and there was this homeless man in a red shirt that they began to minister to. And they said to him, you're not going to be on the streets any longer. And as they left, and they just felt like they were just throwing that out there. And he said that in his mind, he thought, oh yeah, ladies, you know, I'm a crack addict, you know, I've been on the streets my whole life, you know. And so he said, like 2 days later, he went into a crack house, bought crack, tried to use it, and just threw it down and just went, what the heck am I doing? And he walked out, and he came to church trying to find the 3 ladies that he'd met at Chick-fil-A to thank them. He had gotten a job, he'd gotten off of the streets, and he was completely delivered from drugs just from a word. So this lady was like, I was going to quit the school, and now I'm here, I'm in. So.
Wow. You know, the word I keep getting is, this is why. This is why. Yes, it might not be easy. Yes, it might take work. And yes, you'll have to deal with people's real issues, the real hurts they've been through, the real junk that's in there. But this is why. Because their life will be saved. Because they're going to find other people's lives who will be saved. This is the actual transformation. This is the actual gospel. And this is why it's so important. It's these stories. It's empowering a generation, not older, not younger, not whatever. It's all of them. It's empowering them to go out and do what Jesus has called us to do. And it's so beautiful. Like, this is advice for new school leaders. It's like the advice is wonderful, but also the testimony says, if we did this, you can too. The testimony says, this is how we started 8 years ago, got a vision, and just the Lord led to one thing to the next. Pastor Sally, you discovered our curriculum. I don't know. Were we even advertising? I don't know.
Well, it was actually online,
Yeah.
but I went on. I didn't know that Bethel even had a school. I didn't even know who Bethel was. I'm just going to be honest. I had a vision. God showed me what He wanted me to do, and I had no idea how to do it. And so I just went to Him. I said, Lord, I don't know how I'm going to do this. He said, train up this generation. I saw these people on fire, wandering around, and He said, this is the revival generation. You must train them. And I'm like, how? And so I was actually online looking for a Kim Walker CD because I was crazy about her music. And as I went on Bethel's website, I saw the curriculum. And the Lord's like, this is how you're going to do it.
Oh, wow. Pastor Sally, are there any other testimonies that you have where it's just, God's been so obvious? Yes, it was a leap of faith. Yes, there were times where it felt like, am I even hearing you? Like, this feels crazy, but I feel like you, and I know Nina is too, you guys are like testimony junkies, and God's done so much where it felt like, okay, this feels like I'm on this wild goose chase, but he's right there. It led me to this, and this is exactly what we needed. We didn't even know we needed it, you know? Do you have anything like that that you can share and just, you know, like release to these people who are going to listen now, listen in the future? Any other stories?
I just think one of the most important things leading a school is that you allow the students to experience God and encounter God in a really deep way. Um, I've seen other people start schools and they've ended up shutting them down because it was all head knowledge. It was all just watching a video and let's just talk about what we learned. And so I'm really big on, okay, we just learned it, now let's do it. So for example, there's one video where Benny talks about encountering God. So at the end, all the students are like, will you lay hands on us? We want to experience the fiery burning eyes of Jesus, you know? And then the video cuts off, you know, and she's like, yeah, I'll pray for you. And so what I do is at that moment, I take them and we go into an encounter and we pray for all of them, and it's powerful. And you have so many different types of people that come into the school. I mean, most of them, when they come in, they don't even know what soaking is. They don't know this culture. We've had people come from Lutheran churches, Baptist churches, Catholic churches, you know, just saved. I've, you know, had several students that just got saved, but I knew the passion was there and they wanted to learn and grow. So, you know, we have all different kinds, and we really have to teach them through hands-on.
Absolutely. So I love that you just said that there's so many different kinds of people, even denominationally, right, that are coming to your school. How do you build, or how did you build bridges with the churches, even for people to feel safe that they could come to your school, to give them the language where it's like, hey, we're starting together. What did that look like, even for other leaders in town as they heard about this?
Well, one of the things I love is that they have to have a pastoral recommendation. So, you know, you can immediately hear their pastor's heart on how they feel about them coming to your school. and so that's wonderful. And I feel like it's really good for the pastors to know, you know, this person that goes to my church is going to be going over here to this school. What the pastors have done or said to me is, we have seen the fruit in these students, and we would recommend the school to anybody because of the fruit that we see. So they're bolder, they're more confident in who they are and in who God is. They're taking risks like never before. They're walking in a level of honor that they never did before. There's just fruit everywhere you look, and that's what the pastors get excited about.
Did you guys do anything initially to reach out to them or let them know, hey, we're starting a school? Was there any conversation even beforehand, or was it more just as the process kind of opened up? Maybe you weren't even expecting people from outside churches to come, and then as it started to unfold, you know, what was that process like?
I really wasn't expecting people from outside churches to come. I thought it was just going to be our church, and I thought this was just going to be a blessing to our church. And the first year, like I said, ladies came from Louisiana. We had people come from all over. We had people come from Huntsville, which is an hour and a half away. You know, I mean, people were driving from all over. I don't even know how they all heard about us, to be honest. And what happened was then I began to develop some relationships with the pastors from the churches that they were coming from because of the fruit that the pastors were seeing. The second year we had the school, we had pastors and leaders from around the city come, because they were like, wow, these people came to your school and they've grown so much, I need to come. And so now, I mean, this year we have so many pastors and worship leaders from around the city that are at our church, youth pastors. It's amazing. And they're coming to the school and getting empowered and then taking it back to their church. So,
you know, one of the things that I always remember that you told me when we met was that the fruit sells it. That was like your greatest marketing tool, and it's been one of your greatest marketing tools. It's the transformed life that that shows people this is what I learned. This is who I know now. This is where I am because of what I learned from the school. And I know in the first year it's like word of mouth, like who's going to come, who's going to be here. But every year I feel like it gets easier in that sense of it's the fruit. And we're not responsible for making that fruit grow, but we get to pour into them. We get to love them. We get to be a part of their journey, and we get to show them more and more who Jesus is. And as they discover that, they grow. As they discover that, they heal. As they discover that, they grow into more of who they've been created to be. And that's where the fruit comes. And I love what you were saying, even when you shared, it's the moments of watching Benny talk about the Lord, and then you thinking, okay, what do we do here? Oh, I know. I'm a woman of encounter. How I so know the Lord is through encounter. Let me lead them on an encounter. And I think that's what's so powerful of knowing as school leaders, no matter your role, no matter what it is, we all hear from the Lord, and he will direct us and guide us in what it is that we're meant to do. And I love that in that moment you said, hey, we need to have an encounter. And in that same moment, you actually allowed your students to walk into something that you had breakthrough in, and knowing that school leaders have that same opportunity to carry that same authority in knowing, hey, I have breakthrough here. I carry this. I actually get to release this to my students. And continually, it's that adventure with the Holy Spirit. It's that adventurous thing. You called me here, God. You're going to qualify me here, God. You got to show up, God. Like, you have to do this, and knowing that you can trust him. Pastor Sally, what other thoughts, maybe the Holy Spirit's leading you to something, but I would love thoughts, tips, suggestions. If you want to share testimonies, we can open it up for questions, but I'm going to kind of kick it back to you and kind of give you some time.
Well, we've developed things along the way. Every year, I was telling Randy today, every year we've changed things and made it better. And I always ask my leaders, what can we do to make it better next year? And, we're just growing together, and we're building the airplane while it's flying. And so we're constantly making changes and shifting things. One of the things that we decided to add was what we call a revivalist checklist. And I got the idea from Kevin Dedman from the Firestarters class, and he had one of those checklists in the back, and I took that as an idea and then changed it up a little bit. And we have certain things that they're all required to do by the end of the year. And one of them is we require that they go at least on one treasure hunt. We do treasure hunts the first Saturday of every single month here at Victory, so they're required to do at least one. And then we have the 2 surprise ones, which they never know when those are going to hit. They're required to do an outreach. Each group is required to create their own outreach and put it together and do it together. And it's so powerful every year to see what they come up with. Just the creativity and the things that I would have never thought of. And now we're redoing them every year because they're such powerful outreaches. So those are a couple things that I've found really works well for us. And then just really helping them through the process of growing. We do have intercession an hour before school starts, and that's an opportunity for them to come and soak and get in the presence of God. And we do prophetic intercession. So I'm always asking the students, what are you hearing? Release what you're hearing. So they're learning how to grow that way, and prophetic intercession as well. Yeah. So I think a lot of it is giving them a lot of opportunities to do hands-on.
Yeah, and I love what you just said about intercession and the component that you guys do worship every week. I think for some schools, it's like, okay, we've got a limited amount of time. We're meeting once a week. If we do 45 minutes or an hour of worship, that's an hour that we could be doing fill in the blank, right? What I think a lot of students, even in our own school, they've learned through corporate worship is how to actually worship the Lord corporately, how to actually worship the Lord. Sometimes it's soaking, and sometimes it's we're going after something. We're actually going to we're all together. We're going after praising him. We're going to go after worshiping him. And from that, he has an opportunity to actually crash down upon us, right? Can you share maybe even some of your thoughts behind including that in your school night? Because again, it's only once a week.
Right. We changed our school the third year, I think, that we did it, to 3.5 hours long. So we do it from 6 to 9:30 in the evening. And the reason is because we have so much that we have to fit in. We made the intercession where it starts at 4:30 and goes till 5:30, 5:45. That way, if people can get off work early, they can come and be a part of that. If not, they just come in at 6 o'clock. So from 6 till 6:30, we only do 30 minutes of worship. And the reason is we just have such a short period of time, like you said. But during that time, our worship leader is training people. She's getting people who didn't even know that they were comfortable singing in front of people and empowering them. Another area for people to grow. We also have prophetic art going on at that time. We have the flags and the dance going on at that time. So it's giving people all these different ways to express themselves. And then from there, we'll go into testimonies and then have a time of activation. I try and do at least 2 or 3 activations a night, even if it's during the group time. So people are constantly being activated in either healing or the prophetic in all different ways.
And I love the fact that you do testimonies each week, even allowing that to be part of your culture and knowing that we're going to celebrate what God's doing, because what we celebrate, we'll replicate. And so knowing that that's something that you focus on each week. You know, we're going to worship God. We're going to go after it. We're going to express ourselves however we want. Worship can look so different. But then also celebrating what he's doing. I'll just ask, how has that changed for you guys over the years and even your focus on testimony?
Well, we started out, I've always been passionate about testimony. So we started out with testimonies from the very beginning, but we learned really quickly that part of our responsibility was to train the students how to give a testimony quickly. So we put a timer on the wall and we tell them, you've got a minute to share this testimony. And think about what you're going to say before you say it, and we will have to cut you off if you go too long. And that's been really powerful because we can get 10 or 15 testimonies sometimes in a night. Sometimes we'll just feel Holy Spirit on something. We'll have a repeat, backs getting healed. So we'll go after backs. Anybody need your back healed? And we'll see 7 more backs healed and then 10 more backs healed. And, so we just listen to Holy Spirit and move with him. And I feel like that's really important. We have a plan every week, but we always allow Holy Spirit to change that plan. So
it's probably some of the best advice that you could give a leader, of knowing, you're going to prepare and plan, and God can do anything with that plan. He can build upon it. He could change it. He could bless it and just say, yep, this is great. Do this tonight. But knowing and having that flexibility of, God, this is what we prepared. Do whatever you want tonight. It's huge. Even giving other leaders permission of, it's okay if you prepare something and it doesn't happen. It's okay that you only get X amount of nights during the months that you lead. And if the plan changes one night because he's on something, it's okay. You're not shortchanging your students. You didn't do anything wrong, but you've actually yielded for him to do something beautiful and powerful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other advice or thoughts, or just, hey, this is coming to my mind, I feel like I need to share it?
Yeah, I feel like it's very important to just empower people. Every night we have somebody that does the prophetic. They do like a prophetic transition where they hear and see what God's doing in the room and transition from worship into testimonies. We have different people that do that. We have different people that do the testimonies and oversee that. We have different people that are doing announcements when we have announcements. So just all different kinds of things. So we're constantly empowering different people. So I just, try and just empower different people so they can all get a taste of getting up there. Another thing that I started doing, I think the second year I had the school, Georgian Banoff had invited me to come to a conference and minister with a group of students alongside him and Heidi Baker. And so we went out there, and I had no idea he was going to call us up in front of everybody and have us all prophesying over everybody in this conference. And my students were just like, ah, you know. And so I realized really fast, okay, I need to get them used to standing in front of crowds of people and prophesying. So I have them now on a regular basis come up and do all different kinds of prophetic activations where they're having to stand in front of people and prophesy so they can get used to that environment. And that was key. It was kind of came as a shock to me because I had no idea he was going to do that, but they did well. They did great.
I think that's another key too, even as leaders, in your school, creating a covering where people feel safe enough to take risk. You hear it all the time here at our school, and probably you guys hear it too, but we say faith is spelled R-I-S-K, and giving people a chance to actually take risk, but doing that under the safety and the covering of mothers and fathers. And so as Pastor Sally is saying and sharing, you know, she's creating space for her students now to actually take risks, to actually do things that otherwise would be really uncomfortable. But if they can do that under the safety and the covering of her house and her school, they're going to feel super confident the next time they do it because they've done it before. They're familiar. They know that their mama is going to watch them. They know that their mama is saying, hey, you got this. I wouldn't put you in this place if I didn't think you could do this. And that's just, it's huge. And it says a lot about how your pastors are really leading the way and loving the students in your school. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Are there questions that you guys have? You guys could ask questions. Definitely we'll give you another chance to share anything, Pastor Sally, but are there any questions from the people on the call now? Yeah, Oren? Hold on, let me unmute you. There you go.
Hey, what did starting worship look like? Like, did you have your own team, or do you do student teams, or is it a mixture of both?
Actually, worship was very difficult at the beginning when we first started the school because we were pulling from students. And so, you know, we don't know who our students are going to be until we go through all those applications. We don't know what their gifts are. We don't know if they can sing, if they can play an instrument or whatever. So at the beginning of the year, when we first started the school, we didn't have a very strong group of worshipers. So we used videos. And we started by doing that. We'd use Bethel live videos, and that was pretty powerful. And then I think the second year we had somebody actually say, you know, I'd like to help you lead worship, and I'd like to start drawing in some of these students. And I'll never forget, there was this one student that she had sang in the choir as a young girl and locked her knees and fainted. And so she was terrified to sing in front of people. And this leader, this worship leader, took her under her wing and empowered her. And she ended up becoming a part of our worship team in the main sanctuary. She had a beautiful voice, but it started in the smaller setting of VSSM where she began to gain that confidence back again. So, you know, we just give them a safe place. And, you know, if we don't have a team, then we'll use videos, you know.
Awesome. And
Hold on, I'm trying to unmute, but then it changed. Oren, go ahead one more time, and then we'll pass.
I was just gonna say, are you like musical yourself? Like, do you have input in worship teams, or like, how do you pastor that if you're not? Or other people?
I am really good about just taking my hands off and just believing in leaders and letting them fly. This year, our worship leader has done phenomenal things with worship. She actually has other worship leaders from around the city that are a part of her team. And so it's just, I don't know a lot about worship. My husband plays the electric guitar. He's on our worship team here at Victory, and he's a musician and has been for years. And I know nothing. So I know when the anointing's on it and when it's not. That's about it.
I love that, though. I never thought to draw from other worship leaders in town. So that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. And I actually, I didn't make that happen. I mean, they were students. They applied for the school, you know, on their application, it said that they were worship leaders. So I took their application and I gave it to the leader of our worship, you know, and I said, here's some students you can pull from. She never knows. She's actually coming back this next year. I've had different worship leaders oversee worship every year, different students. This one that I have this year, she's amazing. Her name's Kim, and she's actually told me she's coming back, and she's like, how do I pull a team together when I don't know who I'm going to have? And I go, it's the same every year. We don't know until those applications come in. So I've told everybody that the first 50 that apply this year get a free t-shirt. So we can get applications in before August to make our life easier.
Do you also raise up like sound technicians? Like, do you have people to kind of train the technical side of things as well?
Sound has been kind of a challenge for us in the school. The first few years I had one of the young men who had helped me when I was in youth ministry, who helped me start the school. He was very strong in media and sound and everything, and he did everything. And I kept telling him, you need to reproduce yourself, reproduce yourself quickly. And he tried. And, but you know, the sound technician's been a little bit more complicated finding somebody like that. That's got that gift mix, and it's very important because it'll make or break your evening, you know.
Yeah.
Great. I think Randy, you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned, Sally, that you really would like for people to immerse in the culture for a year. You immersed in the culture for a year. When you're saying that, are you talking about the Bethel culture or the BSSM culture? And is there a difference?
I believe there's a little bit of a difference, but not much. And honestly, for me, I don't think it's necessary that they immerse for a year. That's just what I did. Yeah. Because it was all, for me, that was the first I'd ever heard of Bethel's teaching and Bethel's culture. So
in speaking of that particular thing, would you develop a team before you want your team immersed in the culture too? Or do you just throw them into the deep end and let them learn to swim?
Well, you really want them to have those core values of the school. It's going to be very difficult for them to lead if they're not honoring, if they're not the golden people, if they're insecure. You know, you're going to want people who are going to champion others and not compete with them. So whether or not they're mature without ever having the Bethel culture, you know, and having that in them or not, you know, I would definitely pick leaders though that can champion others.
Sure. You mentioned, I mentioned to Cassie, I had 13 questions. I'm trying to narrow them down. The revival group leaders, revival group pastors are at your school. I heard you say that now Diane's on your paid staff. Are your revival group leaders remunerated in any way, or are they strictly volunteer?
They're all strictly volunteer. Everybody's volunteer except Diane.
Okay. Is that the same way at BSSM, Cassie? Or revival group, some revival group leaders remunerated?
Yes. Was it always this way? No. When we first started, even Papa Chris will talk about it. Like, he wasn't getting anything near regular for years. He came here. That's like his joke of saying, I came and they said, run the school. We can't pay you, you know?
Yeah,
and for a while it wasn't like that. For a while, a lot of, stipends were different back then with taxes and everything. But it wasn't necessarily like a regular salary. Now things are different. We also base our tuition so that we can pay staff, so that we can have the courses that we offer. It's a little bit different, but we highly suggest putting that in like a budgeting tool, which we have something available that you can use to figure out what it really looks like to do tuition, so that if you need to pay for a building expense, not everyone does. If you need to pay for curriculum, not everyone does. If you have to pay for revival group pastors, again, not everyone does. You'll see what it is that you need to pay for and what you think, hey, where we need to start is asking people to volunteer. It even might be helpful. Sometimes I often hear leaders talk about it. Don't be too quick to give someone a title. let them really get to know them, date them through that process. And then as you really get to know their character and know what it is that they carry, then give it to them. But it's not necessarily the most important thing to give them that title and that paid position before you've really seen who they are.
So you mentioned you have a tool. Is that part of the BSSM Equip?
We've got that on the toolkit, on the school
Okay.
training toolkit. And so we can help you with all of that,
Okay.
stuff, Wendy.
Does that come with the BSSM Equip subscription?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, some of that we just have, because some of it we just passed out for years. But that toolkit has like comprehensive lists. There's like hundreds of documents. So that if you're like, we have a question on this, it's right there. You have a question on this. But yeah, we want to support and provide anything.
One of the things I want, I'm a part of BLN. I'm huge in being connected with Bethel. I'm not trying to duplicate Bethel here, but I love the DNA and the character that we receive from there. And the school is something I'm a part of the Sozo ministry too. I'm a trainer and part of the network. Our church is part of the network. And so I would want this to be a part of Bethel Certified or whatever you call it. We want to make sure we're doing everything to do that. I'm assuming that's on BSSM Equip as well.
So it's actually not. We actually don't certify schools. There's no, you guys have to do X, Y, and Z to get our stamp of approval. We're here to equip, to resource, to support school leaders, but they're not necessarily affiliated with BSSM. We have folks who use our BSSM curriculum, but it's not as if there's like a BSSM network of schools, if that makes sense.
Okay.
We have tools to even help you understand how you can market, how you can advertise, what to maybe not base the logo on, so it doesn't give the impression that it is a subsidiary of BSSM. Just because I think people can then think, oh, Chris will be live, Bill will be live, like, you know what I mean? So we've got tools to help you kind of navigate that process, but we totally hear your heart in that. We totally understand. You're like, we want to live by the same kingdom culture that you guys do, and so do we love what God's doing on this earth. But there's not necessarily like a certifiable certificate of you guys are one of ours. We can list you on our map of schools. Anyone can list the school that they are a part of on our map, so that people can look it up and say, hey, there's a school in Dallas. I need to be a part of this. Link to your website. People can make the decision on whether or not they want to attend. On that, it will list whether or not you're using our curriculum, whether or not you're using our resources. That totally can impact someone's decision on whether or not they come to your school just because they know that. But it hasn't hindered people in the past, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, how about one more question? Because I want to honor Pastor Sally's time. And I know that we do these once a month. We do our Facebook Lives every other week. And in the fall, we'll start doing them every week once we get some of our beautiful third-year students helping us, because there's a lot happening in the school planting world. But let's take one more question. Who feels the Lord on their question? Which one? Well, Sally, you pick.
Oh, that's too hard. What is your name down here?
Oren?
Yeah, Oren.
Okay, perfect.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Arkansas. I mean, I just finished second year, but I'm considering going and planting in the Northwest Arkansas area. So I guess some of my concerns are just, the team building, and did y'all have a church building? But I guess the question I kind of have is, how do you group churches together in a sense that you're not like sheep stealing? I guess that's one of my questions. Since you came from a church, I know that, it's beautiful to see a school come out of a church, but I just wonder what it would be like to collect churches, and bring them together in a way that you're not subtracting from what somebody else is doing in the area.
Right. Well, that's a really good question, because we do have, I think, over 30 different churches represented in our school this year from around the area. And so that is always my concern. I don't ever want to take somebody away from their church. So what I do is I give them a lot of opportunities to do things in the school. But if they're a member of another church, I never pull on them to be a part of our prophetic teams or anything like that that would take them away from a Sunday morning service or something at their church. I also, if they get to a place, because sometimes people, if they're coming from, a more denominational background, for example, they'll come to our school and they'll experience the freedom and the life that's in the school. And they're like, oh, this is amazing. My pastor doesn't have this. We don't have this at our church. And I'm like, so why don't you be that demonstration of God's love, God's kindness, God's honor in your church, and come alongside them and serve. And so I'm really big on teaching them to come alongside and be a blessing, and not, okay, well, come on over here.
Yeah. So do you kind of bring them in that mindset at the beginning, like throughout the year, instead of like, for us, it tends to be at the end of the year when people are going out and leaving, they're like, hey, don't try to get your pastor saved, like those kinds of things. So you kind of come in at the beginning with that, like throughout the year?
It really is throughout the year, and it's when it arises with different students, because I'll find, we have quite a few students that have come from one church, and it started with one, then two came, then the associate pastor came, then the worship leader came. I mean, they're all like, wow, so awesome over here, and I'm like, take it back, so.
Beautiful.
I think that's what's so big, and that's something that you guys have done so well, is even showing students like go and serve, be the salt, not only in the school or in the church, but in your life and everything that you do. Be the demonstration of who God is, who Jesus is, and I love that you're continually offering that to your students. It's something that you guys don't turn off. It's something that you say, live and be who he's called you to be everywhere you go. And do that by being humble. Do that by serving. Do that by going low. And I think that's the posture that you have, Pastor Sally. And I think that's the posture of your school. And I love that that's what you guys are releasing. I would love if you could pray and just release over these leaders who are on the call, release over the leaders who are going to watch this call later. But if you could just have a blessing, whatever you want to do, and then we'll close it up.
Absolutely. Father, I just thank you for revival spreading across this land, Lord. It is your ultimate goal, Lord, for us to reform society, for there to be an absolute reformation of society, Lord, for your glory to be spread upon this earth. And the only way it's going to happen is through your fiery ones being contagious, Lord. Through you moving through each and every one of these schools, moving through your people all over the world. And so, Father, I just release, Lord, everything that I carry to these leaders, Lord, that are going to be starting schools, Father. I thank you for taking them into deeper encounters with you than they've ever had before. I thank you, Lord, for revival just spreading through everything they do, Lord. I ask that you'd increase the intimacy in their life, because everything flows from that place of looking into your face. And I thank you for that, Father. I just ask that you increase everything you're doing in their lives and bless them as they put their hands to the plow. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Pastor Sally, we love you. Thank you for sharing. I can feel the Lord so strongly. God, thank you for what you've done in her life. Thank you for allowing her to be an instrument that is played beautifully, loudly, and perfectly in Houston and all across the world. God, I pray and I ask that you would bless her team, bless her students, that they would have radical acceleration, favor and growth in this next season. God, that people would, continue to sign up, that you would bring unity in amongst the churches, amongst the regions, but that people would feel so empowered to go and be exactly who you've called them to be every single day. God, we thank you for all of these leaders. We thank you that they are planting schools all around the world. And God, may you get your full reward. Lord, would you get your full reward for everything, God? May every son and daughter come home, and may they really know the fullness of who you are and the fullness of who they are. Amen. We love you guys. We will be doing this again. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Love you too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.